Welcome to the Namibia Needs Me podcast, a platform where we take contemporary news stories and incorporate civic education into so that we are better able to create a conversation around what is relatable, currently happening in the country, to be able to share with you and have a creative discussion. Stay tuned. All right. Hi, Ethne. How are you?
Morning, Janola. We've got a lovely roundup of news stories from the week behind
Yeah.
us. We are seeing ravaging fires throughout Etosha, unprecedented damage being caused. And we'll discuss really how that was responded to and some of the implications there. We also have 24 million in state fees going to private lawyers, not
yeah.
state lawyers. This uncovered by investigative journalism. And then we also have our president's first speech at UNGA, at the United Nations General Assembly last week. And we'll take note of some of the most important things that she says there. Where would you like to start? Oh, there's another story
yes,
that you also want to do.
Yes, the by-elections that are currently taking place in the Outapi constituency.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think, let's start from the United Nations speech by our president.
All right.
I know she mentioned very important things concerning Namibia, but also just to lay a little bit of a background, the United Nations has about 100 plus member states, and every year they meet once a year to discuss key global issues, security matters, strengthen bilateral agreements, and basically a few presidents from these member states are allowed to give some speeches in terms of innovation, security concerns, strengthening collaborations. And of note, our president also had her maiden speech at UNGA this year. And particularly for Namibia, she spoke about some very interesting things. One was the National Youth Fund rollout, and of course, the free tertiary education effective as of next year. I know there is something that she mentioned, which was a sentiment also echoed by other African presidents. I know, Ethne, can you take us through that?
Well, almost all speeches by African leaders called for UN reform. 20 years since the African Union's Ezulwini consensus, we still do not have a permanent African seat on the Security Council. And so the Security Council's 5 countries. Tell us more, which 5 countries are on the Security Council currently, Janola? How long have they been there for? Since the start of the UN, at the end of the World War II.
Yeah.
And why no African representation? And for that matter, why do you think Africa should be represented on the Security Council?
As it stands, there are 5 members. There are 5 permanent members of the Security Council and 10 non-permanent members that are chosen by the other countries to serve for 2 years. So you have China, you have France, you have the United Kingdom, the USA, and Russia. They serve as 5 permanent members, and they have veto power. Veto power basically just means they can stop any decision by just voting no.
And do all 5 members have veto power?
All 5 members have veto power. And basically, the purpose of the Security Council is simple things like approving peacekeeping missions, placing sanctions on countries, approving military action, and sort of act as a mediator when there are conflicts between member states. That is basically the role of the Security Council. But Africa, as a continent hosting 54 countries, don't have a seat. So the plight by all African presidents who spoke at UNGA was that it is not justice. I specifically remember President Ruto saying that you are not, now speaking to the UN, he said, how can you be the United Nations if you exclude the voice of 54 African countries? Then you are not really United Nations in practice. And basically what they wanted was let Africa be represented. Let Africa be on the key table where a lot of these decisions are made so that our interest can also be fostered as a continent.
And I assumed that this would be a representative of the African Union. You corrected me in that it would be a representative of 2 countries from Africa. What are your thoughts on that? Would the rest of Africa feel comfortable for 2 countries to present us on the Security Council? Would that then be a revolving seat as well? What's the best format for African representation on the Security Council at the UN?
Because we feel, well, a lot of the presidents, as per their speeches, want some two, but in some case, one president mentioned 3 seats. Because we are a continent of 54 countries, it would not be justice to just put one, because our interests are very, very different. You know, from north to south of Africa, you have so many different interests, so many different dynamics at play. So 2 seats would be amicable, 2 permanent seats, that is, and perhaps maybe a rotation of those 2 seats, rotation of that veto power would be essential for us to be able to effectively contribute to security, global security concerns. Yeah.
Roving seats with veto power just feels like a very volatile situation
Yeah.
for me in a body that's supposed to be creating, mitigating volatility, really.
Yeah.
What else? Another thing that she mentioned that was interesting to me was her commitment to gender equity. And there's just something quite poetic about the fact that 30 years ago at the Beijing Declaration, in which a lot was decided in terms of gender equality,
Yeah.
where she was present at that conference.
Yeah.
She is now representing her country as its first female president. And so that's something quite poetic.
Yeah. And not to talk of Namibia, in terms of our top political leadership, 46% of our parliament is made up of females, which is one of the the highest.
Women.
Sorry, which is made out of women, which is one of the highest in the world, which shows that in terms of her commitment, Namibia has done major strides in terms of inclusivity, although there's still so much more that needs to be done in that regard.
Namibia needs me and Namibia needs you. This is the podcast for curious minds and people who understand that change starts at home. Don't be intimidated by your news. Follow it with me and Janola as we break it down into simple terms and ways that you can affect real change.
Great. So let's move on to the fires at
Yeah.
Etosha. Every time that we speak about fires, people say, "Oh, but fires have always happened." Lightning strikes, and our natural habitat is actually used to being renewed by fire once every while. But that happened far less frequently than wildfires are currently happening. And it's really detrimental. And we're seeing it across the world, not only in Namibia, not only in Africa,
Yeah.
but we're seeing it in Australia. We've recently had the fires in LA. And so we are being called upon to recognize that this is part of a global pattern of the climate crisis accelerating.
Yeah.
So it's far more than just those regular natural fires
Yeah.
that our ecosystems were used to and needed.
Yeah.
We're used to accommodating and needed for certain renewal processes in our ecosystems. This is unprecedented.
Yeah.
These are
Especially
new-
for us at this scale, it's just so big. Like 34% of the Etosha National Park has burned. And the reports even say, Ethne, that about 9 antelopes have been found dead so far. And these wildfires have also affected communal land areas around the borders between Namibia and Angola. It's, I know.
a 9 antelope is actually it's not a representative amount of
Yeah.
kind of visualizing the levels
The
of
flora
damage.
and fauna that has been affected, yeah.
The levels of damage just affected immediately, but the repercussions
Yeah.
going forward of that landscape not being available for the animals that do survive and would need it. And then therefore there's more interaction between wildlife and humans, and we know how that goes.
Yeah.
So the ripple effect of this for years and decades to come is going to be devastating.
Yeah. And I think even for us as citizens, it is very, very important. Climate change is real. And there are basic things that we can do, even in our own personal capacities, that can sort of help mitigate these kinds of challenges. Instead of driving to your house, driving to the mall near your house, rather take a walk with the family, enjoy the fresh air and still be able to get your groceries here.
I love your optimism, and I used to be so there with you, Janola. And increasingly, I think there is a danger in us saying, the world is at the cusp of actual ecocide.
Yeah.
And individuals making small adjustments to their lifestyles are capable of remotely moving the needle on that. I think there's a real danger in that. I think that narrative takes us closer to the collapse. And I think we need to realize that our individual choices are so minuscule in comparison to the real drivers of this,
A large
which
scale,
is massive, which is basic policies that have massive implications through corporations, through continued carbon extraction. And those are the battles we should be fighting, not our own plastic use or our own trip to the grocery store, but actual policies that we do have control over, but not by small daily actions. Instead, by collective community action that calls for effective policy change on national level, but also through our presidents on international forums like the UN. Internationally, we need real policy change to make our planet habitable for the next few decades so that we don't all
thinking of the next generation.
I mean, within our generation, we are headed for some real catastrophic change. So it's not even thinking of the next generation. It's like, just think of yourself very selfishly and mobilize through collective action for real tangible policy change that actually can move the needle at all.
Namibia Needs Me is a civic education project co-implemented by the Hans Seidel Foundation and the Namibia Institute for Democracy. This project's ultimate objective is to foster and strengthen democratic participation from all eligible voters and young people in the country. I think on that note, we can move on to the next story. Actually, a very interesting one. The Namibian reported a story of how government has spent 24 million Namibian dollars on legal fees for private lawyers.
Which is significant because our government has its own lawyers on the payroll. We know what a big burden our national payroll is for our national budget. We have lawyers, but this is significant because we've had some real important cases against the government. Specifically the ECN with the last election, some opposition parties questioning the legitimacy of extending the polling hours. And then also the other one was the red line with Job Amapanda bringing a case saying we need to remove the red line. So those two cases would have pushed up legal fees, and the government then sought external representation, which it justifies as bolstering mentorship for its
existing lawyers, in-house lawyers,
which I think is a valid claim, but 24 million. And this was only uncovered through investigative journalism. And so that really calls for greater transparency, greater access to information. To what extent are we allowing our government to fight calls for representation, to fight calls for equality and transparency by having access to greater legal fees? The person who has access to greater legal fees is often the person who can stamina through a contracted legal battle to the point of winning. So if we're giving our government access to almost limitless funds that could be going to other things to defend themselves against citizens, against the
plea of citizens,
is that a sustainable situation? Is that a situation we want to support? Or do we rather want our government to fight legal battles on an equal footing to its citizens, not an unfair advantage? And do we want to limit the amount of funds that go to defending government so that we have funds available for more important priorities? I think the question is, what would Namibians rather want to see 24 million being spent on than legal fees protecting the government in court?
I think it's actually a very, very gray area, because government could come out and say, no, look, we have the constitutional mandate to defend ourselves in terms of any court case brought before us.
But not at all costs, not at the cost of hungry children.
Exactly my point. So it shouldn't be done, and that is always the gray area that our government colors above, because we always find ourselves in a position where what could have been the priority? What could government
And
have
so
prioritized?
maybe we should call for that grey area to be less murky and more black and white.
More black and white, exactly, yeah.
But there's another story you really wanted us to also focus on, Janola. Tell us more about the last one.
It's particularly on the elections currently happening in the Outapi constituency.
Okay.
So recently, the sitting council of that constituency resigned to become the regional governor, as appointed by the president, and subsequently the electoral commission.
Sorry. You already lost me. The sitting
sitting councillor.
The sitting councillor of the constituency.
Of the constituency, yes.
Resigned so that he could become the regional
governor. Yes.
Of the same constituency.
Of the region.
Of
the Omusati region, yes.
So a councillor of the constituency is like a member of the municipality.
No, member of the regional council.
Oh, you see, you always...
So Omusati region has about 6 constituencies.
Okay.
So one of the councillors of those constituencies was asked by the president to serve as the governor. And because he could not...
But a governor is not an elected official. A governor is appointed by the government.
By the presidency.
That's right.
So he resigned his position as the constituency councillor, regional councillor.
An elected member, an elected public servant.
Yes, to be the governor of the region.
An appointed
governor of the region, yeah. So as a result, the Electoral Commission, as per the Electoral Act, had to now
re-elect someone.
Re-elect someone by organizing a by-election.
And wouldn't that sounds to me like a betrayal of your the people who voted for you? They voted for you to do this job.
Yes.
And then you're like, just bye, I got another job.
Yes. But you see, in practice, to be governor is a more higher calling, because the responsibility is now at a more regional level as opposed to at a constituency level.
Okay, but question. Decentralization is an important priority. It was especially an important priority upon the creation of the Constitution. The appointment of governors is a post-constitutional construct created by government to have more control over your decentralized government, to in effect contradict decentralization to a certain extent. So I would question the assertion that being a governor is a higher calling than being a councillor. Actually, being a councillor is true representation of your electorate's needs. Being a governor is being appointed by the executive to kind of provide a check and balance on decentralization. So I wouldn't say it's a higher calling.
My feeling is that because the legal language for the justification of why the governor is appointed is that to represent the president's interests within the region. Because the presidency is the highest office, and as per the language...
The presidency is the highest office of?
In the land. That's the highest office in the land.
Separation of powers.
Yes. So
the presidency is not above the judiciary, and the presidency is not above the parliament. It's not the highest office in the land. We've got separation of powers.
Yes, as per the 3 branches.
Yes.
So within the executive...
So is the president the highest office in the land?
Within the executive.
Okay.
So, and the governor also now falls under the executive. Initially, they would fall under the legislative, but now they fall under the executive. So the president being the highest office in the executive and the governor falling right under there to sort of represent the interest of this office and to now help all the other governors. So in terms of hierarchy, governor is sort of a representative, but still oversees the entire region and not just the specific constituency. That would be my feeling.
So murky.
Yes.
And it makes you so uncomfortable because it works so against the principles of decentralization.
Yeah.
And decentralization is such a noble, democratic
it's a principle
attempt.
Of democracy.
A real democratic attempt. Yeah. And this feels contradictory to that to me. So it's very murky, but I love the debate.
Yes.
And we must continue with it. This is a continuation of a previous debate we also had along the same line.
Yeah.
And so we'll continue with it as we go. Thank you for a wonderful roundup of the week's news stories, Janola. As always, have yourselves a lovely week.
All right. Good to be with you, Ethne.
Thank you.
Don't be left behind. Don't miss out on a single week. like this episode, and subscribe so that you can stay abreast of what's happening in the country and the change that affects your life. We're also available on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and we have an excellent website with all the resources that you need.